Hello and welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at two new cameras from RunCam. Just when you think you've got them all done, they bring out some more. So these are the new Sparrow cameras. There's this standard size one. We'll take all this stuff out of the box in a minute. And there's also the micro Sparrow as well. Now what I want to do in this video is quickly go through the specs, talk about how they differ from some of the other cameras that RunCam do, because the short version is they still perform very well, you'd expect them to, but these are really 16:9 or widescreen versions of the Swift cameras. Now the Swift cameras from RunCam are kind of their version of the Sony HS1177 style cameras, and they've been great, but the challenge that I've always had, because I quite like widescreen goggles, things like the Dominator V3s, I have things like Quantum Cyclops and things like the Fat Shark Transformers, anything with a screen, particularly if you're sat FPVing with a display rather than goggles, you tend to find that you're looking at things in widescreen and you get that distortion. So the idea with these two cameras is that they are both in 16:9, so I would just say think of them like a slightly upgraded Swift camera with widescreen. So in the packet for the big one, you get loads of accessories, just like you do with all the other RunCam cameras. You get lots of mounting hardware, additional case, you get quite a few cables to connect it to your FPV transmitter, and that cable in the middle is actually an extension cable to put the OSD control into. So this is the OSD joystick, the standard 2-pin one that Fat Shark have been using for a little while. In the Mini, let me just show you how this comes out, exactly the same size as the other Mini camera that we looked at a while ago, but again this one is 16:9. Big difference here of course is that they have taken away, unfortunately, the ability to measure voltage. So out the back you just have the 3 pins to power the camera and to get video out, and the other 2 pins for the on-screen display. And again you have some goodies in here, basic mounting hardware, the OSD cable, and the cable to connect to your video transmitter as well. So before I show you some footage, I'll very quickly show you what the menu looks like on the larger of the two cameras, and once you start looking at this, if you've already watched any of the RunCam reviews, particularly the ones like the Swifts, you'll start to get an awful lot of deja vu. So here we are on the bench, just plugged in to the camera so I can show you the screen. This is actually the screen from the Fat Shark Transformers, which is kind of showing my point about the majority of these kind of displays being 16:9. Now the little joystick works the same as all the others. Press it in the middle and you get the basic settings that you can go through to change how it works. So you have settings for exposure, the shutter mode, the automatic gain control, and the automatic white balance as well. You can also change things like the sharpness, the high dynamic range, contrast, saturation and gain, and I would come back in here and potentially turn some of these numbers down. One of the things that I'm finding with this camera, you'll see it in the footage in a second, is in high contrast areas it is slightly over sharp for me, similar to the way that the original Eagle looked, but you can change it all using these settings. If you hold the joystick over to the left hand side, it selects the battery readout, and then you can move it around the screen to where you'd like. Hold the joystick to the down position, lets you select the name, and you can move that around as well. And again, you can change that to your own pilot ID so you can find the FPV signal. Hold the joystick to the right and you'll select the time, and you can move that around as well. Very, very similar to all of the other RunCam cameras. If you press and hold up, then you go into another menu where you can decide what's going to be on the screen, and you can also change the name of it. So again, you could have it, rather than saying RunCam, I've changed all of mine to say Painless 360. But what I'm going to do is just turn all of those pieces off, and let me just show you a couple of pieces of footage just to give you an idea of what this thing looks like. This footage is taken from the full-size Sparrow with all of the settings absolutely default, apart from me turning off all the other pieces as well. Now I'm actually recording this image inside my Fat Shark Dominator V3s, and that does add some extra artifacts into the image. So the image is slightly better than this to the naked eye. But it's quite a challenging time to try and take footage from an FPV camera, because we have a very bright sky, we have some parts of the image that are really bright because they're in direct sunlight, and we have other parts of the image that are in quite a bit of shadow as well. And this is showing off RunCam's wide dynamic range, which, let's be honest, they've had for ages, and works really well. So even that left hand side here as I'm walking along that's in the shade, I'm still being able to see lots of detail, which for FPV flying is really important. If you go from a light area to a covered area or an area that's in shadow, maybe under some trees, you don't want to lose all of that contrast. The colours by default are a little bit overblown here. I've attempted to reduce the gain for all the three colours down a little bit. It looks a little bit hyper real, but you can hopefully see the very wide aspect ratio that we're getting out of the camera. It's almost like the super wide settings from some of the action cameras that are out there as well. And as I'm moving around here, I don't know if you're picking it up, but it is very sharp pinpoint image, potentially in high contrast areas, maybe a little bit over sharp. But here where the canal boat is coming under the bridge and I'm shooting towards the sun and the sun is being reflected off the water, you can see what a fantastic job it's doing in terms of contrast, handling the light as well. So in conclusion, these still tick all the boxes. RunCam has been making these kind of cameras for a very long time now. They have a very extensive range, and what they had been lacking is lots of options for those pilots looking for 16:9 cameras, and I'm guessing that's exactly who these are for. So the easy way to think of these is it's a 16:9 version of the RunCam Swift. Now, as we looked at the beginning of the video, the specs show that it actually has a few more TVL lines and some other bits and pieces. It's a slightly different sensor, but the latency seems to be around or just below about 15 milliseconds, so it's nice and quick and lag isn't a problem. I do like the fact that there is the voltage measurement on the Sparrow as well, on the large one anyway, because that means that you can pop it onto something like a fixed wing, connect that up to your flight battery, and if you don't have any fancy flight control systems or anything on that plane, it's just very simplistic. You can monitor how much oomph your battery has left. I love that, and I'm always disappointed when RunCam take that off their cameras, because it means that you have to be using some kind of flight controller to get your battery voltage up on the LSD. Do be aware the smaller one won't work as well in lower light conditions. These cameras are not designed for super low light. They're exactly the same as the Swift, so when it starts to get dark, you'll start to lose contrast in the image and you'll start to get graininess, and the smaller version will suffer from that a little bit faster because it has that much smaller lens. So if you're looking for a 16:9 camera and you don't want to go for something like the Eagle, which is one of the other cameras that RunCam do that do that 16:9 aspect ratio, then we now have another choice. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video, and particularly for watching right to the very end. We try and release a video on Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes we'll release one or two extra ones in a week as well. All of the videos on the channel are organised into easy to use playlists, so do have a look in there, because if you're interested in a subject, we organise all the videos on that subject so you can find them easily all together in one place. If you like what we're doing, then please like and subscribe and tell others about the channel so they can come and join as well. We're available in all of the usual social media places, particularly in places like Instagram, Twitter, and we also share all of our 3D designs on Thingiverse.